Hey Waffle Gang, I do hope you are well. My name is Mark and today we're checking out some more Reddit stories, and if you do love a Reddit story, why not consider hitting that like, subscribe, maybe that notification bell too. Let's crack on with today's first story. Much love guys. Now today's first story comes from the relationship advice subreddit from a throwaway account that says, my wife paid off my mortgage, then threw it in my face over a disagreement. I, 36 male, have known my wife, 37 female, half my life. We reconnected 10 years ago and started dating a little less than 7 years ago, and have been married for 4 years. I bought our current house 10 years ago before we started dating and refinanced when rates were below 3%. We were together then and decided to just have me on the loan. I'm a government employee making roughly 120k a year, and she works in education making roughly 40k. Quick rundown on our finances. We joined our finances when we got married. I have roughly 4k in credit card debt. She has around 10k in credit card and auto loan debt, plus she brought 50k in student loans, currently sitting around 25k. We came up with a budget and plan to tackle these debts while also investing in retirement plans from our jobs. A year ago, her grandfather passed away, and she received around 150k. She sat down and asked what we should do with the money. With our salary, we can easily pay more than minimums on our debts, plus set aside for retirement and vacation funds. I told her it was her money to use as she wanted. She decided to pay off the mortgage that was in my name. She met with a tax specialist and figured out the numbers. Honestly, this made me cry because it was genuinely one of the kindest things anyone has ever done for me. Fast forward to last Friday. We both get home around the same time and start doing our normal routine after work. We chat about how work went and relaxed for a bit. She cooked dinner and I cleaned up afterwards. I loaded the dishwasher and sat down to play Final Fantasy Remake. I'm not a huge gamer by any means. My wife heard me mention that I wanted that game and its sequel that just came out, so she surprised me with them. I told her I'd be playing for roughly an hour, which how long I usually play before my eyes hurt. She sat down and cracked open a book like usual. It's something we do most days. Roughly an hour later, she gets up and says it's my turn to take out the trash. I replied, okay, give me 5 minutes because I'm fighting this boss. She replied, I paid off this fucking mortgage and you can't get off your ass to do this for me. I'm shocked at this point because she is never like this. We communicated early on in our relationship when she moved into our house that if she wanted me to do something, to ask and I would do it. If I was already busy doing something, I'd give her an honest timeline on when I could do it. But if she needed it done immediately, then to let me know, and I would stop what I was doing and do it. This has worked wonderfully until then. I pause the game, take the trash outside, and just try to get my anger under control. She has never yelled at me before, but honestly, it's the holding this over my head that hurts my heart. I didn't ask her to do it, and our salary was more than enough to allow her to keep the money safe for herself. Eventually, I go back inside and told her I don't like her holding that over my head and that I never asked her to do that for me. She replied that I was ungrateful and gave me the silent treatment. The next morning, she apologized to me in tears and said stress from work got to her. I believe she is telling the truth because some of her students are in abusive homes and child services hasn't done anything to protect those kids. This whole issue is wildly out of character for her. My question is, how do I handle this? I'm not leaving her because this is the first and only time she has acted this way. She did say it though, and it still hurts, so how do I move on from this? Now you said this is totally out of character for her, so I'm going to go along those lines. And now to start off for me, I'm going to go very back to the start of the story where you said, it was just you on the loan. And I kind of wondered if there was some sort of resentment building up because when she paid off like 120k, she's now resentful because she wasn't put on the deed, or maybe she was, but that information wasn't in the story. So it had me thinking along those lines. Is what she said absolutely wrong? Oh, of course it is. It was kind of shocking the way that she said it, like I paid off this fucking mortgage and you can't get off your ass to do this for me. But maybe the lashing out is just the stress. Does it excuse it? Absolutely not. So the only way forward for this is have a conversation, especially about what happened that particular day. How is she feeling about this? Is it about the mortgage really? Is it just stress? Does she want to be put on the deed? All things that need to be discussed. And, the wife mentioning about child services and, her being in education and seeing a child that's in an abusive home and basically all the hoops you have to jump through. I've mentioned in the past about a teacher friend who went through similar things. And you can see the toll it takes mentally on them, especially, trying to get this information through to the higher ups and get something done about it. You certainly take all that home with you. Again, not excusing the actual outburst, but in the comments, Severe Maintenance says clearly there's two things happening here. You'll need to find out what happened that day to cause her to act out in such a manner. She likely had a seriously bad day and acted out of an excess of anger that could not be controlled at that moment. So she lost control of herself and said something very hurtful. Whether she realizes it or not, she clearly has resentment issues about paying off the mortgage. You said she wasn't on the original mortgage paperwork, which means she likely wasn't listed on the deed. I have to ask, did you put her on the deed after she paid it off, or is the house still in your name? Nikki Baskin replies that saying, I agree. She had a bad day and a secret frustration about you not putting her on the title after the payout came out. Unfortunately, this happens with misplaced anger and uncommunicated needs. She should have talked to you about it when she paid it off. It's great though that you're willing to do it now, and hopefully you can all move on from this quickly now, that it's not her paying off your house, but our house. Love Being an Arsehole says, am I the only one out here saying that was the stupidest thing to do with that money? Hope she paid her credit card debt, hopefully in the 9 to 10% range, but probably in the 24%, before paying a sub 3% mortgage. Witty Stock says, I think you need to add her to the title. She may be regretting it because she technically has no ownership in it, and that would be the appropriate course of action since I'm guessing she has as much into the house by now as you do. Then you guys can discuss relocating the funds that went towards the mortgage to other things. But more fundamentally, I'd ask her if she does regret it, then offer to take a loan back out and reimburse her, because she isn't allowed to hold this over your head, and if she thinks she might again, it's not worth it. Opie says, I'm all aboard adding her to the title. It's our home after all. Just never thought it to bring it up when we agreed to not add her to the loan when I refinanced. And a final comment from Aro who says, wow, there's a lot here. Paying off your mortgage when you have consumer debt at presumably high interest rates plus a ton of student loans was a financially poor decision. Since that time, are you guys making an extra effort to pay off our loans and debt? I assume without a mortgage, you guys are able to do that since you continue to live above your means. Is she the household manager? Does she specifically have to ask to help with tasks? The fact that before marriage you had to have that conversation sounds frankly exhausting. By using the word help, you're implying it's her responsibility to keep the house, but it seems like that she's working full time. Did you show gratitude for the gift? Did you give her gifts? Basically seems to me that this isn't about the mortgage, so the question is, what is it about? Opie responded and said, I did say I was stepping away but saw this notification. I would have preferred to pay off the other debt, but it was a final gift from her grandfather, so I left it up to her. Because I have a mandatory retirement age, we are balancing paying off debts as quickly as possible and investing for when I'm forced to retire. With the mortgage gone, this debt should be gone within the year easily. Our household responsibilities are roughly 60 to 40 with her having more. I work longer hours and have shift work, but I'm always willing to fill in, especially on days where she says, I just need to sit down all day. She does the same for me. We had that conversation because of a previous relationship. My ex wanted things done immediately, and if I didn't do it, she would huff and do it. For example, I was taking a break from mowing the grass and told me when she asked me to load the dishwasher that I would do it after I finished mowing and showered. I was very grateful when she paid off the mortgage, and we both like to randomly buy each other gifts. If I see her eyeing a book, then I'll surprise her with it. She does the same for me. I think her job is stressing her out and some resentment on not being added to the deed. Never thought of jobs having a mandatory retirement before. I don't know why that's never popped into my head. It makes sense. I was just quickly Googling and someone says military personnel or air traffic controllers or airline pilots, which I guess makes sense, right? So OP comes in with an update and says this is going to be a fairly long update, I imagine. I cooked dinner for my wife last night, and after we had a very nice and heartfelt conversation, She started the conversation by asking me if something was wrong because I made her favorite dish. She seemed nervous. I told her there was something wrong, and it was that I fucked up big time when she paid the mortgage off. She started to interrupt, and I asked her to let me finish because I wasn't mad at her. I told her I was going to add her to the deed and it should have happened as soon as she paid off our house. She started crying, telling me that I didn't have to do that, and I told her that I wanted to and apologized for not doing it sooner. She tried making excuses for me as to why I didn't do it so sooner. She mentioned something that I had actually forgot about. Shortly before she paid the house off, I'd received a letter saying my FAA Class 2 medical certificate application had been denied for a medical issue, and I need some doctors before they could reissue my Class 2. Honestly, this wasn't a big deal and something that had happened to me before, and I thought I'd reassure her enough that everything was going to be okay. I said that I had forgot about that entire episode because it may have seemed like a big deal, but it really wasn't. I reiterated that I fucked up big time and asked for her forgiveness, which she gave me. I asked her if not being added to the deed had bothered her, and she said it hurt her feelings, and it hurt to hear that because that is the last thing I ever want to do to her. I told her I would take Monday, today off, and if she could take a few hours off at the end of her day, that we would add her to the deed. She said that she would do that, but wanted to take the whole day, and we could go in the morning and then spend the rest of the day together. We kept talking, and I brought up if things were more stressful at work than what she had let on, and she said that one of her students showed up and her clothes were covered in cat piss. Not the first or second time for this little girl. She was crying at this point, and she curled up and laid her head on my lap. I tried my best to soothe her by playing with her hair, and eventually she was able to start to relax. She volunteered that the little girl and some of her students had been on her mind when she snapped on me. I had an idea where this was going to go. Backstory, my wife found out in her early 20s that she wouldn't be able to have children. I won't go into detail as to why. Why is it fair that terrible people get to have children and I can't? I did my best to reassure her that I love her regardless and that maybe we could look into adoption like we discussed before we got married. My wife told me that when she reminded me it was my turn to take out the trash, that she wanted to walk and talk with me. Context on our house. We have a few acres of land and it's about a 5-minute walk to the pool trailer where we toss the garbage, and I take every Saturday to the dump. She planned on asking me how I felt about fostering some of these kids. Despite my previous posts, some of these kids do get removed, but unfortunately some do end up going back most of the time. We have the extra rooms and I said we could definitely do that. We talked about ways to try to manage her stress better, and she mentioned that when we go hiking it helps her clear her mind and relax, so we agreed to do more hiking. I mentioned seeing a therapist as well, and she was open to the idea, so we'll be looking into that for her. I reassured her that if she feels overwhelmed that we are in this together, and she just smiled and said, "I know," in a Han Solo voice, and we both just erupted in laughter. Eventually, we circled back around to her inheritance, and I asked her if she regretted using her inheritance to pay off our house, and she said no. She thought about it and considered paying off our other debts, but wanted to do this for us. She said the tax specialist advised her to pay off other debts first, but she just wanted to know how doing this would affect our taxes. At the time, student loan interests were frozen and our credit cards were transferred to 0% interest cards. She understood that paying them off first and using the rest on the mortgage was probably still the better move, but she wanted the larger debt knocked down. She asked how I felt about slowing down our retirement saving and investing and just steamrolling the rest of the debt. I can retire at 50 and have to retire at 56, and I've been preparing since I joined the Air Force and continued in my current position. In my TSP alone, I'm closer to 2 million than 1 million. We will be just fine in retirement, but we both love to travel, and I want to continue to see the world. We discussed this at length before I mentioned that instead of going to Australia for our 5th anniversary, that we had enough saved for it, that we could just pay off the debt right now and still have enough to go to France, in particular Paris, instead. She smiled and asked me if I was sure because Australia is my #1 bucket list destination. I told her that she always wanted to spend Christmas in Paris, so why not do it this year and pay off our debts? Australia can be our 10th anniversary trip, so our debt is completely paid off and going to Paris for Christmas. Let's just say that made her very, very happy. So we both used a sick day and were able to meet with a real estate attorney and tax specialist. Without getting into details, there were a few potential drawbacks that were discussed with us, but ultimately nothing too drastic. Overall, it took around 3 hours and now my wife is officially on the deed. We're about to head out for a late lunch and curl up in bed and binge watch Chicago Fire. Edit for a technicality. Everything has been turned in for her to be on the deed. Wife and I consider it done, just waiting for it to get officially official. So if that bothers people, then oh well. And I think a lot of the comments were just hung up on the finances of this and what happened initially, but I'm not going to get too much into that. Their money, their choice, whatever. But I'm so glad that they did talk things out in the end and come to some sort of healthy resolution. But now I'm going to turn this one to you guys. What do you guys make of this situation? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Let's move on to another story. And our next story comes from Automatic Trick 7755 and says, "Am I the arsehole for giving my ex-girlfriend her ticket for Taylor Swift, but cancelling everything else? I'm working overseas right now and I managed to get tickets for Taylor Swift in Singapore. The concert is this coming Saturday. My plan was to fly my girlfriend over for a little vacation. It's a long way from Connecticut, so she was going to be staying for 10 days. I was clear and I told her that we would have 2 weekends together as well as the evenings, but I still had to work during the daytime. Last week she called me and said she was not okay with this being long distance and that after the concert, we were over. I asked for clarification. She said she would come for the 10 days and we could have fun, but then we were done. I can have fun without paying for it. I transferred her the one ticket and cancelled everything else. She called me to scream at me for cancelling the flights and hotel. I told her that I wasn't going to discuss it and hung up. I blocked her on everything. I'm hearing from people back home that she has lost her shit. She'd been bragging about getting to see Taylor Swift and the vacation. Now she's telling everyone that I cancelled the plans just out of the blue. I guess that is sort of true. I did not discuss it with her before I made my decision and did what I did. I unblocked her long enough to offer to buy her the ticket if she wasn't going to use it. That conversation was unpleasant and involved a lot of profanity. The upshot was she would rather let it go to waste than let me have it. Her friends have been defending her and calling me an arsehole. My position is that I would feel like a John, flying her over for fun." You guys got to fill me in on that, feel like a John. I don't know if it was just like a typo or that's actually a saying. I googled it and I couldn't see anything, but so you guys have to let me know. But what planet is this girl from? You announced that you're going to fly her over. It's going to be a good trip. She's going to get some time alone on this trip as well. She's going to see Taylor Swift. And she says, "But hold on first. Before I come over, I just want you to know that after this trip, we are done." A pre-dumping. What the fuck? I wouldn't have even bothered offering that ticket initially. I would have just cancelled everything or just kept the ticket, one or the other, if you couldn't cancel it. No contribution says not the arsehole, but why did you give her the ticket when you'd paid for it? Should have kept it and taken someone else. She was just using you as a sugar guardian. Hopefully you find someone that you deserve soon. Isopod Ordinary says not the arsehole for cancelling that all expenses paid vacation, but you're the arsehole to yourself for wasting the ticket by sending it to her. Opie says the ticket was a birthday gift. I know it's stupid, but I promised her that ticket. Bright Firelight says you're a good dude. Don't let crazy tell you otherwise. Life is a Beauty Joy replies to that saying good dudes can be idiots too, you know. Nate says, what in the world did she expect? Pre-dumping you before her trip. Dr. S. Vulcan says, if you're going to be a gold digger, then at least be a smart gold digger. Feral Cat says she was probably just trying to manipulate OP to take time off from work when she was there so he could chase, cater to, and beg her like a rejected dog. So he could take her everywhere and spoil her. Sounds entitled. She might have been looking for grandiose attention and gestures, but instead she got consequences. Gotta hate when that happens. Opie should send her a card and welcome her to the Karma Lounge and fuck around and find out club. So around 5 days later, OP comes in with their update and says, my ex sold me back her ticket at face value. She couldn't find anyone interested in paying for a flight and hotel over. I didn't want to see Taylor Swift, but it was easy to sell a pair of tickets for a nice bit of change. I wish I had more to tell. I wish I could say that I went to the concert and met a lovely woman that my ex sold the ticket to. I wish I could say that my ex flew out on her own dime to win me back at the concert. None of that would be true. I made money selling something I bought for a woman I thought I was going to marry. I'm glad I found out what sort of person she really is before I made that mistake. Sorry this isn't more exciting. Thanks everyone for helping me see my way through this. I hate telling people it's a positive when they've just had a breakup. It always feels like, sort of backhanded or whatever. But, OP did dodge a bullet in this situation. Getting pre-dumped when you've just offered something absolutely amazing for them is just a new level of wildness for me. But what do you guys make of this situation? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Now, just a huge thank you from the bottom of my heart for getting involved in today's stories. Your love, your support, your time always means the absolute world to me. So thank you so much. You are amazing. And I will see you in the next one. Take care and much love.